We've been exploring some Skirmish wargaming tactics. I love Skirmish games because it's a chance to take my miniature collection, whatever that system is going to be, and really explore models and miniatures in a vastly different way, a different narrative compared to big scale games. But as most wargaming systems favor larger scale, whether that's 1-to-1 like Warhammer 40,000, where one Space Marine is one Space Marine, or something like DBA, playing my Romans, I've got a little stand and element of 4 Romans on it. That doesn't represent 4 Roman soldiers. It represents a cohort or a big part of my legion. So from that perspective, while many of us play big games, when you scale down to Skirmish, things change. The rules might be the same, but there's certain fundamentals that are vastly different. So within that framework, I wanted to kind of push up a couple of Skirmish ideas, get that to the Wargaming Tactics playlist here, and encourage you to look at some Skirmish games to explore your miniature collection from that side of the table. Now, I'm going to be talking about Mordheim as an example. This illustrates the idea of a powerful unit, how it's not really the most effective thing in a skirmish-based game. This is a template. You're going to look at the concept and apply it to your game. Some framework, some background. Mordheim is an old Games Workshop GW game. It's been discontinued 15 years, 20 years, something absolutely insane. It's got a lot of flavor. It's got a lot of fun. It's basically like Grimdark Dungeons and Dragons. And I've got a number of warbands. We play it 4, 5, 6 times a year over the course of a weekend. It's kind of this regular campaign. And the backstory is there was this giant city. Comet from Sigmar smashed into the city, detonated on the city, just completely obliterated it. So you've got this ruined city of ruins. Well, in the center of the comet was Weirdstone, this magical stone that exploded on impact. And now there's shards spread all throughout the city. And everybody is willing to pay to get their hands on these shards. So adventurers, warbands, different factions enter into the city, the ruins of the city, where anything goes, and are trying to obtain these shards. Sometimes they're offerings to the dark gods. Other times you're selling them to nobles and alchemists to extend their life. They're worth a lot of gold crowns. So it's a skirmish war-based game where you develop your warband and you play a variety of missions trying to get this weird stone and get in and get out. You can play one-time games, but it's also a campaign-based system where you level up, you recruit, you equip. I play the Possessed, the Dark Gods, Magister Fritz leading his warband into the ruins to become more divine. Now, the warband itself, you have a leader, the Magister. He has access to magic, or they have access to magic, and they've got some good war gear. You've got your rank and file followers that just okay stats. Here you go, some gear. You've got a Dark Soul. This is kind of like a Dark Warrior, Knight, Blackguard, jacked up. But then you have the Possessed. And the Possessed miniature, the Possessed unit, is where this warrior has been infused by the dark essence of Weirdstone and has been infused by the dark essence of the gods and is like 10 feet tall, super mutant, super jacked up, super mutations, very powerful, very fast, hits extremely hard, but is extremely, extremely expensive, mad expensive. Everything is converted to gold crowns just because it makes it easier. So at the end of the mission, the weird stone that you've recovered, you convert it to gold crowns and you can spend it. So a Possessed would be like, X points for the model, then 15 points for this mutation or gold crowns, 25 gold crowns for this mutation, 30 gold crowns for this mutation. And you can jack this thing up super powerful. In a large scale war game, so that's the framework. And I always play the Possessed. I always play a Possessed. I did have a warband where there was 2. I was able to remove the 0-1 cap. It was more for the lulls. So we've got that framework. When you have a powerful unit in wargaming on a mass scale game, I'm playing 40K, I've got a baby Titan, or I'm playing my Romans and I've got some siege weapons, I'm going to blow that thing up. I'm going to be pushing that forward doing as much damage as I can, and just very, very aggressive with it. And I'm going to try and position it so you have to deal with it. You have to stop it. Skirmish, that's vastly different. I take my possessed and I run at your warband. You run away. I send it to 2 or 3 models. You run away. You redeploy. Things move too much in a skirmish-based game where you have 5, 8, 10 miniatures for kind of the classic Death Star or the Iron Hammer type unit to work. So now what this means potentially is I've got this possessed unit that I've paid tons of gold crowns for running around, and no one wants to fight it because it's going to kill them. It would just absolutely destroy you. Maybe you hit me from magic from afar, or maybe you use missile weapons. But even putting that aside, I can't chase everything down doing it. Second to this, and we explored this, I pushed it up to the Wargaming Tactica playlist last week, model count is huge in skirmish games. You want to get as high as possible model count. So I can take a possessed, mid-range possessed jacked up, or I can take another four rank and file, just miniatures, right? Cultists. On top of that, if I lose the possessed, if my possessed gets killed, how am I going to replace something that costs 120 gold crowns, compared to 30 gold crowns with equipment? I mean, it's massive. So what you see is it's fun to play. It looks awesome in the lulls, but it's not the most optimal. In terms of Mordheim, not to jump into that Tactica, I'd be better off taking my Magister, Dark Soul, and everybody else is rank and file cultists. The more cultists on the table, the more weird stone I can farm, can take a couple of losses and actually make more money than this super unit. But we see every warband kind of has that killer unit because they're fun to play. Now, how do you utilize it? I'm not saying it's not useless. I'm just saying it changes vastly. The tactics change vastly. How you use something like the Possessed, and it seems antithesis to what I'm trying to do with it, you use powerful units in skirmish for area denial. So we've got a part of the ruined city. We've got 6 or 7 buildings, a ruined church, a ruined inn, spread out on the table. Somewhere in there is Weirdstone in a couple of the buildings. You want to send a dude into the building, search, get the stone, and get out. I can't be everywhere at once. I want to control a certain area of the table so I can farm it and look for the stone. I also want to kind of prevent you from looking for the stone. So if I take that Possessed and I run it up to the right side of the table, put it in a building, now kind of draw this circle around it based on how far it can move and charge and attack, I've now potentially cut off 3 or 4 buildings from you searching. The Possessed is just going to sit there. It's just going to hide. It's not going to be out in the open eating missile weapons and magic. It's going to hide. But if you come into range, I'm going to charge out and beat the heck out of you. So you can often utilize these units for area denial. Another example, just for framework, we've been jumping into some Rogue Trader, with the reprint coming out for Warhammer 40,000, just kind of exploring 40K from a different take. And the advantage I have of being ancient was I remember playing Rogue Trader. I played the game. And there are certain rules in the game that, on paper as a 40K player, you understand it, but until you've experienced it, that's a different story. So I had a slight advantage. Side note, what do you do with that advantage? It's all good fun. I'm going to beat you over the head with that advantage and enjoy it, because after we play 3 or 4 games, you're going to understand the difference, and then you're going to be beating me over the head with it. So I really want to utilize it. Rogue Trader is essentially 40K with around 10 or so models. It's like the original kill team. It's the original way to play the game. And we are using updated Warhammer miniatures because we want to take advantage of the cool sculpts. I'm pulling in a ton of models from Blackstone Fortress and utilizing them for it. But it's still a skirmish-based game, and we're mapping it to the units in the book itself. Not Imperial Guard, Imperial Army. And I'm playing Imperial Army, and my friend was playing Orcs. There's this kind of refinery we're fighting over, and there's a tower. I put my Heavy Bolter dude in the tower. This is area denial. Heavy Bolter is kind of like a powerful machine gun. costs a lot of points, like plus 25 on top of the model, which is a lot for Skirmish. And Imperial Guard are not really, Imperial Army are not really very elite. They're normal humans. So while you pay less points for the miniature compared to, say, taking a Space Marine, you pay more for a Space Marine. You got power armor, you got better ballistic skill, you got better toughness. So yes, when I mount a heavy weapon on a Space Marine, I'm paying more, but there's more resiliency. I mount that heavy weapon on a normal human, an Imperial Army, it's still the same cost for the weapon, but it's a lot more vulnerable, even if it's cheaper. So you tend to kind of just kit out with las guns and auto guns and stuff like that. But I take this heavy bolter, and I'm going to use it for area denial. I'm not going to have it running up the center and engage with the squad. I'm going to get into a position, and I'm going to area deny some of the table, much like the Possessed miniature from Mordheim. The difference is I've got mad range. So I park it up in the tower, and Rogue Trader has this rule called Overwatch, where it's kind of a hybrid interrupt multi-dice roll, meaning I plant the miniature there, and as long as no one's in sight and it's my turn, I say I'm on Overwatch, which means on your turn, if you move into the field of fire and I can see you, I get to attack. It's the kind of reactionary. I mean, it makes sense. So I go into Overwatch. The rules for the heavy bolter are sustained fire. You roll a d6, and if you hit, you roll again. And if you hit, you roll again. You can potentially keep rolling. So Orc player runs out, runs part of their warband across, and they're like, well, I can, I'll eat like 1 or 2 Overwatch shots, 3 dice. That's fine, because I'll get into a great position. Area denial. I'm sitting there. I rolled legendary. I'm rolling dice. I'm like, I hit Overwatch, hit, sustained fire again, hit, sustained fire again, hit, sustained fire again. It was legendary. I was a little bit sad-faced because I blew my legendary dice rolls in that game. I would much rather save them for another game. But it was worth the price of admission simply because we were playing with a bunch of other friends, so they got to witness the godhood in that moment. I say that within the framework because you want to look at your skirmish-based game and say, I'm taking a powerful unit, such as the Possessed or such as the Imperial Army Guardsman with that heavy bolter. It plays vastly different. I'm not going to use it to be aggressive and beat you over the head with it and push it forward like a Death Star compared to a game with a large model count. I'm going to use it for area denial so that the other units that I have can possibly work better. But that said, you do need to walk that fine line because going back to the Possessed miniature, jacking it up, there's no limit to those mutations. I mean, well, there is a limit, but you can jack on those mutations. I can be running around with a model that's like 400 gold crowns compared to a single miniature rank and file Possessed, cultist is like, 30 gold crowns or 15 gold crowns with a hand weapon and a shield or a spear to push that up. Vastly big difference. Big difference between the two. Understanding in Skirmish it's different. Too much might be too much.